Hello and welcome back to The Jump Show, a monthly podcast hosted by yours truly. I'm joined by the usual suspects, Dan Overall and Jake Price, but we'll get over to them in just 2 seconds. We have a packed out episode for you, starting with eye catchers from the past month. Jake's eye catcher actually went in last episode at 100 to 30 on its next start. That's going to be followed by a new segment called Unpopular Opinion. Jake actually thought of this idea. He seems to be carrying this podcast a little bit, but I think this part or segment is actually tailor-made for me specifically. No stats or trends, unfortunately, this month, although last month, Venetia Williams absolutely killed it. Once again, Jake, thank you. And of course, a preview for the busy festive period of racing. Dan, how are you doing? And was that intro up to your very high standards?
Well, I'm very well, thank you. But the part that caught me was it was hosted by yours truly. He's got to the stage now in his own career where he doesn't even have to mention his own name in his own head.
On my own channel.
The ego trip is unbelievable. But on that absolutely pleasant note, it's good to be back.
And Jake, how are you doing as well?
Yeah, all good. Ready for Boxing Day, the manicness of racing TV having a race on every 2 seconds that are all split screen. So who can't wait for that?
I've got a 3 Irish channel though, lads. So that takes out 3 of the 19, which is nice.
That is nice.
Okay, so we're going to kick things off with eye catchers. And I suppose it's only fair to rub this man's ego and call him the king of the eye catcher. Dan, if you don't already, go over and check out his Twitter at Over and Clear. He has a weekly column with horseracing.net, which is specifically built for eye catchers. So he has about 50 ready to go. Who is your eye catcher from the past?
Not wrong, actually. Yeah, I've got 2 this time. One I did mention in one of those columns, the other not so. So the first one, a bit more of an under the radar type, and that's Dubrovnik Harry. It's third in next novice hurdle on his first ever start behind Hermes Boys, rated 124, and that's a decent form behind some smart types. And another horse called American Jerry, who has plenty of smart bumper form in the book. Dubrovnik Harry did pretty much everything wrong, jumped out to his right, incredibly green, but picked up in the manner of a decent horse once he finally got to grips with what was required. Didn't finish a miles behind. I think he's a decent type for the future, very much a work in progress, but he's definitely one to have in your trackers for the long run. And the second one, a bit more this season focused. I think it's probably a lot of people have this one on their radar anyway, but West Cork with a view to the county hurdle. I don't necessarily know there's many prices at the minute. I think he's going straight there. We know Harry Skelton and Dan Skelton absolutely love that race. They target it. He's going straight there. I think he travelled well enough the last day with a couple of excuses for maybe why he didn't necessarily go through with it. Forget that. I think if you can get 16 to 1 plus on him for the county, that's probably a good bet at this stage.
That is a really good bet, actually. And yeah, 100% confirmed, just to go straight to the county hurdle from what I was reading as well. I'm not sure if eye-catching is the correct word, but Landenabo lad for Tom Simmons, he's just been running without his correct conditions. I think the key to him, or we know the key to him, is soft and heavy ground. He obviously ran my Drogo close when I had to give him £5. I'm pretty sure he won a listed contest in heavy ground as well. His first run back this season wasn't awful behind Hunter's Call. He obviously ran a really good race in the International. The ground was far too quick for him this weekend at Ascot. I think there'll be a nice race for him in the new year. Definitely one for the trackers. And Jake, who is yours?
Yeah, so mine came at the beginning of the month, like your top return and novices handicap shows. It was like the most weird race in the world because it was like the ratings band meant that every single horse other than Call Me Lord ran out of the handicap. So it's essentially a glorified novice chase anyway. But Fern Hill ran a really nice race. Last season, he's trained by Ben Case, 6-year-old. He's big, like chasing looking type. He always looked like he was going to improve for a fence, and he duly did that on his first start. He's rated 130 after a decent novice hurdle season. He's pulled up in the Grade 2 River Don, actually one I quite liked him, but it was such a strange race. I think you can just put a line through that. But yeah, he came back. He was running off 137, so he's £7 up the handicap. I know obviously a lot of them were, but still, he ran a cracker. He went off out in front, jumped really nicely. Then going down like between the last 2 flights, he like lost the lead to the Tom George horse called Come On Teddy, who was running in like the final of attempts. I think he came 4th or something in that. And he overtook him. And then Fern Hill rallied again on the run-in. He was just denied a neck. Who's been put up £6 for that, so he's off a mark of 136. Obviously, that's actually technically £1 lower than what he was running off last time because he ran off 137. But yeah, I think he'll go in next time in a novice handicap chase.
Okay, moving swiftly on to unpopular opinions. This one was actually quite topical when Jake came to this idea. And with the nature of the monthly podcast, it is slightly outdated, but I did want to hear the pair of yours opinion. And I've labelled it racecourse gallops are actually a fantastic idea. They're just not marketed correctly. So in its current format, they're fairly useful. I'll use John Bon as an example. He went to the Newbury morning and gained valuable experience of travelling at the pre-parade ring as well. He was quite keen that day. And then obviously when he went to Newbury, I did message you, Jake, at the time and said, how's he looking? You said, yeah, he's not doing too bad. We know he's a bit jig-joggy, but I think it's hard to argue that the event didn't help him. Now, people will argue that it promotes horses not competing with each other. Now, there is a minority of trainers that will sort of abuse that system. But from this year's event, we had 26 runners from 11 different yards, and 22 of those horses have been seen on the track since, some even multiple times. Now, I know we're going to speak about him again in a little bit for other reasons, but Nicky Henderson's going to take the brunt of this. But all 5 of his runners at that morning have actually come out and run. So hard to pin him down on that. Nichols, one of the horses there was Clan de Zobo. We already knew that he wasn't going to be running in the meantime anyway. So I don't think it's being used incorrectly either. Now, what I wanted to talk about the marketing aspect of it is I just can't believe that this wasn't open to the general public. Did a little bit of research and it was open to media and members holders. So unless you're paying £200 a season for a Newbury membership, then you can't go and watch it. Now, I don't know about how you'd actually set it up. Don't have that information to hand, unfortunately, but you could sell X amount of tickets at like £5 or £10. You're not going to pack the place out, but you're going to pack the place out with real keen horse race goers. And I think this is also going to make people fall in love with the horse rather than just the betting. And obviously racing gets enough bad publicity without the people that go there just for an absolute jolly and a piss up. I think there's lots of things to like about it. I think you could have a coffee counter whipping out coffees. You could have a Q&A with trainers and jockeys where people could talk about their favorite horses. How many of us realistically are going to be able to go to Nicky Henderson, Paul Nichols, Emma Laval, Colin Tizard's yard and see our favorite horses do a piece of work? I don't think many of us will ever get that opportunity. So to have them all in one convenient place for a cost of £5 to £10 seems like a fantastic idea. I've chewed you guys' ear off enough. Tell me why I'm wrong. I'll go to you, Dan.
I mean, I think racing loves a scapegoat at times. I think when those mornings come out, especially when we were lamenting good ground for a long time and no horses really competing and very small fields, I think it was an easy go-to scapegoat for most people to just say, okay, this is clearly the source of the issue. It's not the source of the issue. It just happens to be going on at the same time. Causality and correlation, like they're not the same thing. In terms of marketing it, in terms of making it a spectacle, I would disagree. I don't think people really want to see maybe 20 odd horses spread out all across a day, randomly galloping 5 furlongs together up and down. I'm not really sure, unless you're an absolute diehard fervent fan, people are going to want to come to that. If anything, I think it's one of those things there. We're in an era of social media and of extensive media coverage of racing. And before, we didn't necessarily see all this kind of side of things going on. So it was kind of oblivious and the public weren't kind of aware of what goes on behind the scenes. And now we're almost too aware. We're almost too opinionated. Everything that's going on, we're all trying to take in and trying to link everything to all the problems that we see racing has. I don't think what we want to be doing here is making this a go-to thing that racing fans should be excited for and should be appreciative of. For trainers, it's an absolutely brilliant tool to get their younger horses used for the racecourse environments somewhat, get them an experience of going in and going away from the yard. Absolutely get that. But I would be fearful of making it a publicized spectacle, because once you start doing that, how many do you promote? How many times do we do this? And do we really want to have regular coverage of racecourse gallops? I can't imagine that's a good thing. So in short, good idea. I understand why they're around. I think far too much attention is sometimes placed on them. They're not as big a deal as they're made out to be. They are just almost a distraction from the bigger issues that racing has.
So you would much rather, just to sort of clarify all your points here, because you made some very good points. They should still be a thing. They should still have its purpose. Yeah. You'd rather them not be televised on racing TV, for instance.
I don't think making them a giant spectacle is a great idea. Like, I mean, if you want to have the coverage, then fine, but don't like big it up like as it was fairly made out to be a big event that we should all be tuning in for. I think that's a load of bollocks, really. Like, I mean, it can't be a big spectacle seeing two horses gallop 5 furlongs next to each other at 3/4 speed. Come on, let's get real.
Jake, do you have any more to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think Dan's covered off most of it quite well. But what I want to go into a bit more detail is, like, I think there's been a lot more emphasis put on them this year because, like, the trainers that have needed them because of the ground situation. It's been such a dry autumn, such a dry beginning of the winter, that it's been a tool. Like, you don't want to risk a horse in a good ground, full run a race, even if it is a weak race and you probably could pick up some prize money. It's just not worth the risk of the long-term targets, which obviously all these trainers have at Cheltenham Festival, Aintree Festival, etc. There's a lot of pressure on them, obviously, with the owners paying those bills to get them to their targets. So, for them, it's an invaluable tool. And what else I would say is, like, they do happen pretty much every week and probably most days. I mean, over in Ireland, they have schooling races, which you don't hear anything about at all, but you can have, like, a Sir Gerhard turn up in a schooling race over there and pop some hurdles at the same time. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff we still don't know about them, like, unless a trainer explicitly said, oh, he went for a gallop the other day. Or sometimes I've been to Exeter before and they've had, like, Native River, I think it was, galloped at the end of the day after racing, and they announced that on the Tammo type thing. Other than that, like, you wouldn't hear about it. So I think it does happen a lot more than we think. And the Newbury one, because they want it to be like an event, you do hear about that, and that's when you get these opinions, coming out of it. But yeah, they're invaluable tools, and I don't think, I mean, they're obviously a great idea for trainers, but I mean, it wouldn't do some harm to put a few on in, if it's on racing TV in the morning. There's nothing on the morning, is there? It's just, replays of yesterday's racing. So if you wanted to show them, I'm not that fussed. If you get some good interviews out of it, then that's what I mainly tune into them for, is just to see what Nicky Henderson's saying, what Colin Tizard's saying about their horses and where they're going, etc. So that's the bit that interests me the most.
No, I think that's very interesting, your point on Native River as well, because I actually quite like the idea of the keener race goer, if you will, that would stay after racing or turn up slightly earlier to racing to see it happen, rather than having it, because Newbury didn't have an event on that day other than that. So then every trainer or jockey was darting off, and you maybe have not got the full experience. So maybe that would be a way they could counteract it as well. Dan, did you have something to say there, or did your mic just flicker?
No, I was going to say the comment about getting some insight from the trainers. I mean, gee, watching that Newbury stuff, it was, oh yeah, working really well, yeah, going on nicely. It's like, yeah, there's hardly top class insight we're getting from these things. So again, I think like, if that's a side of it, like, if you're going to do these things and publicize it and make it wanting people to watch it for something, you're not really getting anything out of just watching horses work, unless you think you're a real shrewd judge of how a horse works 5 furlongs. But if the trainers are going to make more incisive comments about potential plans, that makes it a bit more accessible. But realistically, let's be honest, they're not going to do that for every horse. It's not the way most trainers operate. Okay.
We did put out a question about your guys' unpopular opinions. I'm sure all of you have them, are just too scared to put them out like I am. Jake, I believe you did get sent an unpopular opinion. So what was that? And we can go ahead and discuss.
Yeah, so James Watson has come in and he said that he loves Nicky shithousery. So he really enjoys, Nicky winding people up and saying horses are going to be running and then they're not, etc., etc. So yeah, what do we think about that?
Well, I absolutely hate it, if I'm honest with you, especially when I've got an absolute chunk on one of them anti-post and it's definitely guaranteed, and then you find out 2 days later that it's not so guaranteed. What I do, and it has been pointed out quite a bit on social media as well, what does upset me is how Nicky Henderson does get the brunt of everything and other trainers can get away with it, and it's sort of like, that's fine. Obviously, you had the Willie Mullins Appreciate It one is a very common one. He was definitely going over fences just 4 or 5 days ago, and now there's a setback. And I don't like how it just didn't sit 100% right with me. Nicky Henderson does get it, dealt a cruel hand in that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think there are slightly different circumstances to when horses have setbacks and certain things like that. And maybe I appreciate it was never entered, like really any stage. It clearly wasn't something right there. And when he did become, obviously wouldn't come out, there was a comment made. So it wasn't necessarily that's a comparable one to some of the ones Nicky's done. I don't know how I feel. I think it makes it slightly interesting, but I can get the frustrations. I actually came to the conclusion after the long walk that Champ is pretty much everything I don't like about JP and Nicky all rolled into one horse, which I think is why exactly I dislike the horse so much. Like, absolute nutcase of a horse. Clearly, all they've got a massive ability, but they're all extremely overhyped. You never get a good price on any of them because of the connections. You never know where they're going to turn up. There's always a really bold excuse for a bad run. So I think, on a side note, rant about Champ, I think he is just the epitome of everything I don't like about those set of connections. There's a lot to like about them. Those are just the negative aspects, I think, all boiled down into one half-a-ton animal, which does my absolute nut in. But regardless, look, Nicky's a class trainer. It's interesting to have a person like that and a character like that in the sport these days, which makes it a bit interesting. But I don't really have a strong feeling either way. I think we live in an era of far too many strong opinions on this kind of thing. And then people inevitably a week later forget what they felt like.
Jake,
Yeah.
are you a fan of Nicky Henderson's shithousery?
For me, I think the problem all stems back to his Unibet blog that he puts out. When he talks about a horse's target, he always makes it seem so definite, like Shishkin going to Tingle Creek. That was always the plan. There's never been a one moment where he's gone, oh, actually, he's not working that great or anything. Not that he has to obviously say that, but I think what you were saying with Willie, like, he would say, like, oh, Shacken might go to the Tingle Creek, like, it's an option, we'll consider it. There's other races for him, but we'll see. And then on the week of the race, he put out a thing in the media saying, yes, he's definitely running. So that was a bit different. That's probably the way you play it. It's the same with Asterion Forlonge. He said for a while, oh, the King George is an option for him. And then this week on Monday, he put out a thing saying, yeah, we're, all being well, we're going. So I think that's kind of the way you need to play it, rather than just always saying, yeah, Shishkin's going to Tingle Creek, we're looking forward to it, he's in good form, yada, 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 all the generic stuff that Dan was talking about earlier. And yeah, just don't put definites on it. Put, this might happen, and then maybe people will be a bit more forgiving when it doesn't happen.
Good point. Talk in riddles as opposed to talking in absolutes. Okay, that's enough about unpopular opinions. If you guys have any disgustingly unpopular opinions, I'd love to hear them, because it just sounds like a fantastic thing we could talk about for the next month's one as well. We're going to move on to all of a few of the festive races. We'll kick things off with the King George. We're going to have a small little runner-by-runner guide, and then we will go and give you our selections for the race before we go on to other races for that period of time. So King George, kick things off, top of the market, Clanders Oboe. Weirdly, I want to chuck this one at you, Jake. Is he the most reliable horse? Now, this might sound stupid considering he's a dual King George winner. Both his wins at the back end of last season were absolutely incredible. But he did disappoint in the race last year. And I know that they, used different tactics on him. And then you remember that he'd also disappointed in Denman as well. Is this a horse you want to be trusting first time out?
I mean, it's certainly not a horse I'm going to be backing at, 11 to 1 favourite or whatever he is. I think with him, I've actually went through and looked at his record fresh. So after breaks of 100+ days, he's got a record of 1-4, 2-3, 4-2-2. So he's only ever won once fresh, which would obviously be a massive concern in such a big race. Obviously, Paul Nicholls is, well capable of getting a horse ready for the day. But yeah, no, he wouldn't be for me. I think later on in the season when he's primed and ready to go, I think that would be when you catch him. But yeah, no, I'd be against him here as well.
I'm pretty sure you have a completely different view, because I did read your little article.
Yeah, I don't know. I keep changing my mind, to be honest. I think there's no better. I think this is a race, really. I don't have a massively strong opinion on it, because I think it's a brilliant race to watch, not necessarily to bet in, which maybe isn't what people want to hear. But I'm not going to give you bullshit strong opinions if I don't have them. So I'll just be brutally honest. His record fresh isn't good, as I think his only win fresh is on his British debut. To counteract that, you'd also say that there is no better trainer at getting a horse ready for a big day than Paul Nicholls. I mean, if there's one person you want to train for this race, it's Paul Nicholls. I think going back to his other wings in the King George, I mean, you look at them now, not exactly the deepest affairs you'll ever see. Some of his best actual form in terms of figures has come later on in the season, the likes of Aintree, and obviously when he went across to Ireland as well. He's short enough, everyone kind of knows the deal. He's 9 going on 10. Like, he's such a admirable horse. He's been around for so long now. But I think, yeah, 11 to 4. it's not a massively enticing betting proposition.
It always looked, we'll move on. It always looked like Manila Indo was going to improve massively for the run. I'm sure we all saw first time out, he was a little bit on the larger side. Not only he is obviously going to improve, but I'm not convinced that a track like Kempton will suit him. Dan, do you agree? Is this going to be like a staying on effort from him, or?
It's a bit of a concern. I don't know if it's going to be a staying on effort. Well, I don't think it's going to be tail off out the back and then rallying on. I think he showed a few times that he has a decently high cruising speed when he wants to. And you remember when he went toe to toe with Allaho for all that time in the RSA, obviously before getting chinned. Like, he can travel a fair old lick in Manila Indo. Obviously, he's going to be sharper. I just wonder if he's just more of a spring horse. I think you look at all the times he's shown his best form has been at Cheltenham realistically. And he's not really come into any of those races with standout efforts. So when he won the Albert Barley, it was a 50 to 1 shot. He'd never shown decent level over hurdles, but not enough to win a race at the festival. When he was second in the RSA, he'd only had 2 starts over fences. Again, neither was like absolute standout Cheltenham form. And he came into the Gold Cup after a couple of really disappointing efforts after a fairly promising start to his first season in the Open Company. From a selfish perspective, I'm quite hoping he's a bit disappointing at Kempton, because I still think he's the most likely winner of the Gold Cup, barring an absolute disastrous performance or a bad 4 or whatever. But I think if he finishes even like 4th or 3rd, or even maybe a decent 5th, I think I'm hoping he'll drift to a really quite enticing price for the Gold Cup, because I think that will be his ultimate day. That will be the test that suits him the best. And again, 11 to 4 here, I think maybe enough questions to avoid me backing him at that price.
Yeah, hope is the big word, because as we know, anti-post markets don't move the way that we all wish they would.
No.
Jake, what's your thoughts on Manila Indo?
Yeah, there's just one day in mind for him. That's the Gold Cup. The track would have enough concerns for me to not want to back him here. So yeah, no, not for me.
Last year's winner of the race, Frodon. Surely to God, he cannot win this race again. If you were to trust the figures, this was the lowest rated winner on RPR since God knows when. I spent a little bit of time this morning. I went back to 2002 on RPRs, and they were all higher than his. He's unlikely to get that easy lead with Dashel Drash in the race, and with Clandis Over likely to go forward. He just looks up against it to me. Jake, straight back to you. Please don't tell me you fancy Frodon.
No, definitely not. I think the thing that keeps resonating with me was Paul Nicholls said about how he was fit for his life for that Grade 1 at Down Royale. That was only, however many days ago, a couple of months ago, but I just can't see how he can be in the same sort of fitness and readiness again for the King George. I know obviously Paul Nicholls is so good at getting them ready, but I can't see him being in the exact same form. It was a really hard race he had as well, so he must have needed some time between now and then, like then and now. So yeah, no, he wouldn't be for me either.
To chuck a quote of Paul Nicholls back at you, when Grenadine won the Tingle Creek, he said you can prime a horse twice in a season. Do you think Frodon won't have another target after this? I'm not too sure. Dan, anything more to add?
I just would wonder how much you could ask ITV and the co. How much would they pay to have it come down to Bryony and Rachel last battling it out together on Frodon, just for the story that they are prying to like promote as the absolute main headline event. Like, he's an absolute fantastic horse. You can't help but love him. I mean, I've crabbed him multiple times, but especially last time, he really did just win me over with the way he dug deep to win that when he didn't have it all his own way, unlike in the King George last year. You say Dashel Drash are going to challenge him. Is he good enough really to challenge him? It doesn't really matter. Can he really put it up to Frodon for long enough? And also, it's an interesting tactical battle, because other than him, do you think any of the other protagonists are going to want to? Because it's like a whole game theory perspective. Like, if another jockey goes and challenges him on a fancied horse, they're probably not doing their chances any good. So why would they do it? They're all going to rely on someone else to do it. As we see time and time again, you don't really want to get into these battles. If you're on a fancied horse, you'd much rather wait. You'd hope someone else does it. I'm not sure someone's going to. I don't think he will be as effective this time around. I also think it's a slightly deeper renewal on paper. You think he'd be grudged to say he wouldn't be there, bang there. They turn for home. I mean, he's going to be ridden. He acts around there. There's a lot to like. I think he'll maybe find one or two too good, but I think he'll put up a bold show.
The Bryony Frost, Rachel Blackmore line just sounds like Ed Chamberlain's wet dream, doesn't it?
Oh, mate. The scripts are already
time.
written.
Yeah.
Every cliche line is already prepared for if that scenario happens. Don't you worry about that, sunshine.
Okay, Chantry House. Put him up on the podcast as my horse to forget for the season. He went and won a poxy little race, beating the big breakaway. I think he has so much ground to make up with this field. I'd be really disappointed if he won this or even got competitive in this. Dan, you're now going to tell me you really fancy Chantry House.
I mean, he does have to improve. Obviously, I mean, you're talking about some of these horses that have been in open company time and time again. They've recorded figures like a stone, maybe around a stone in excess of what Chantry House has done. I mean, you look back at what he's achieved. I mean, he's 5 from 6 over fences, 2 grade 1s. Now, you can argue about whether he was lucky on pretty much both of those occasions, but at the end of the day, he went and did it twice. He had a very good prep for this race. It is about the most Nicky Henderson prep he could ever ask for in a 2-runner race where the other horse didn't really show up because, I mean, we know what the big breakaway pretty much is at this stage. Beat Asterion Forlonge at Cheltenham. Yes, you could argue Asterion Forlonge is better going the other way around. I think there's a lot to like about his profile. I really do. Like, he's still a young, progressive horse. He had a good prep. I don't think there's too much to crab up. I mean, other than the fact you'd say that he hasn't achieved what the others have achieved, but this is the first time he's really had a chance to actually do it.
Fair point. Jake, thoughts on Chantry House?
Yeah, he's obviously one of the unknown quantities in this race, isn't he? Like, if you go and look at his form, then obviously he's got bundles to find with these, but that's the nature of a novice stepping into open company. Like, he could do that and, be the next best thing. But like, I think I'm happy to leave him on this one because there's basically another horse that I think has got more scope for improvement that I would rather go with. But I do see the angle of Chantry House, and I wouldn't be like dead against him or anything like that. I think he's got a chance. Perhaps Kempton sharp 3 miles. I mean, he's 1 over 2.5, so that maybe that's what will help him. But yeah, I think I just prefer Asterion Forlonge, so that's why I'll be against him. Really, is that I think he's going to show further improvement and already has.
I will shoot back to you for Asterion Forlonge, as I believe this is your selection. We all know that he's an incredibly talented horse. If he stays up, you expect him to be bang there. But do you trust him? And has the fact that he was running so well last time out, but before the race had really, you could argue, developed, there's no real price to him, is there? He's like 11-2, and he's got so much to prove still. The main one, will he get round?
Yeah, so I mean, if you actually went back and looked at his full unseat, he didn't really, he wasn't like last season where he was quirky and he was running all down the fence and going off to the right or anything like that. He literally just left his back legs trailing through the fence, and then he lost his balance when he was landing. So it was kind of like a novice mistake, really, which I know is not ideal going into an open company race, but I think you can kind of forgive it. Like, it wasn't his quirkiness that people would put it down to that did that. But he was just absolutely tanking along upside Allaho. Allaho made very hard work of getting home. No one else got to him. So I think he probably would have won. Obviously, it was far enough out, but you can't definitively say that he would have. But because Allaho did, labour quite a bit up the straight, I think he probably would have had enough to go on and win it. And if you're saying he would have won that, then I think he's got a great chance here. Another thing to know about him is he put in a monstrous performance at Punchestown in May. It was a grade A 2 mile 5 furlong novice handicap, and he ran off a mark of 152. He was giving away upwards of £10 to the field, and he absolutely smashed them by 14 lengths. Like, that is good enough to be tried in graded company, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I think Willie's, he's sending him over because he thinks he's got a great chance. I think right-handed is, obviously that's the crucial with him. Even though he ran well at the Cheltenham Festival, going right-handed should see him, improve quite a bit if you're looking at that form line with Chantry House. And yeah, I just think that if he stays the 3 miles, which is obviously the question, he's never ran over 3 miles before, but obviously it's a soft 3 miles at Kempton. If he stays it, he's going to be travelling into the race on the bridle. It's just whether he can kick on, or if it turns into more of a staying test, and perhaps he won't be able to go there. But if it's a pace test, then he has got a lot of pace. He was favourite for a Supreme, I think, yeah, he's one that I'm really willing to risk. I know 11-2 is kind of shorter than what it was. You know, that was just the hype of him coming over. I think, you know, people get excited, don't they, of the Irish horses coming over. But yeah, he'd be the one that I quite fancy for this, really.
If as Dan sort of mentioned, the horses don't try to take on Frodon, this could quite easily turn into a bit of a pace test, because that's the way that Frodon's going to want it to go. Dan, your selection, if you had a few words on Asterion Forlonge as well, chuck them in there.
Asterion Forlonge, I think immediately the hype bought for this race after his performance last time. I just find it, I think as many people will, hard to trust him when he's got more non-completions than he does wins over fences. He did steadily improve, definitely towards the end of last season. You can see that, and that again, that performance in the handicap of 152 was very good. I think Allaho was half cooked the last day. I don't think that was really him. And then Janadil ran on to be not too far away in second. I'm not sure that was really an absolute vintage renewal, that race, and it didn't have time to develop. I think generally he's been at his best when he's able to hug the inside on a rail going right-handed. Will he be able to get that kind of position on the rail here to help him not jump out to that side? I'm not so sure. I think he just chance of him making an error in this kind of a race is too high, and he's got a few too many things to prove for me. Selection, I think it's a really good race. I think we've said this so many times about King George's in recent years, where it looks to be a really good race and then turns out not to be. So you just want to hope this one actually is. I don't think it's a massive betting race, because there's still so many different angles you can approach it from and quite a few unknowns. And the market's kind of sussed it out. If I had to pick one, it would be Chantry House, just because I think he has the kind of profile you'd typically look for in a horse ready making the step up to this kind of race.
Okay. My selection sounds absolutely ridiculous, but you're all so used to that by now, this shouldn't come as a shock. I do think if Clandazobo is ready, then he will have a really good chance and most probably will win. I do wish he had a prep run around Haydock. The thing that caught him out last year was that Haydock was on really heavy ground, but it came up pretty quick this year. I think he actually would have benefited from having a prep run. Heart over head, I'm going to go with Lost in Translation. One concern is that Tizzards are running terribly again. They're without a winner in 14 days at the time of recording. He's had 2 stinkers in the King George, but on his day, we know he's a top horse. Realistically, I said it 2 years ago, realistically, this race should suit him down to the ground. It's an easy 3 miles on fair ground. At 10-1, if he is back to his best, and I really hope he is, Lost in Translation will do for me.
10-1 isn't even a good price.
I'm happy to take 10-1.
Even be half tempted.
1 second.
No.
Where was this energy when your mate was sticking up 11-2 about Asterion Forlonge? Come on, let's have some consistency.
Well, because at least there's some upside there. Lost in Translation's been there, done that. Got nearly retired, came back, won a nothing race, and then is coming back for probably the most competitive 3-mile race we've seen this season, with the yard woefully out of form again. No, can't. He will have his loyal backers as always. I mean, we know there's a loyal clan of Lost in Translation fans for whatever reason. I've never quite figured that one out. But no way. Surely you can't. If he wins this, it's such a disappointing ending to this race. There's got to be something that comes out of this and is better. Surely there has to be. I take St. Calvados over Lost in Translation.
Well, I do like St. Calvados, actually. St. Calvados is a proper boy.
Keeping him last year for this race, and he's been a better trainer for this kind of race. Probably doesn't stay, but you know.
Okay, so now we're on to the selection part of it after the King George. We'll look for horses for the festival that are running over Christmas, and I will head to you, Jake.
Yeah, so I've got 2, but they roll into one race basically. It would be remiss of me not to mention Grangie. So she's entered in the Grade 1 at Leopardstown on the 27th. So it's Grade 1 2 mile novice hurdle up against the boys. Unfortunately, I have no idea if she runs or not, so I can't give you any insight into that. But declarations will be out tomorrow anyway, I think. Oh, sorry, Friday. But either way, she's entered. Loads of them are going to maiden hurdles. I think Willie's, he's entered up like Classic Getaway, so Gerhard, all these horses that need to go to a maiden hurdle, well, are likely to go to a maiden hurdle rather than this. So she's only one of, I think, 4 of Willie's entries that actually has run over hurdles so far. So I guess her chances of running are quite high. But she's already, short enough for the mares novice, but if she wins that, then obviously she's clearly the best mares that we've seen so far over hurdles. So we can dream, and fingers crossed, if she does run, that she runs well. And then, as I was just mentioned, the Classic Getaway, he's one I mentioned at the beginning of the season for the Albert Bartlett. Now that might change a little bit because Grange Clare West, another one of the Cheveley Park horses for Willie Mullins, hasn't been seen yet, hasn't been entered anything, isn't entered anything at Christmas. So I'm assuming there's some kind of issue that I haven't seen if there's any quotes or anything. But perhaps now Classic Getaway might be more of a Ballymore type if they're thinking so, hard, supreme. Classic Getaway might get to Ballymore. He's entered in quite a few 2 mile 4 furlong maiden hurdles in Ireland across the meetings. So he's one to look out for the Ballymore or Albert Bartlett. But, one of those 2 races, I think he's a really smart horse and I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Okay. One of my runners for the festival is Flooring Porter, and he's potentially going to the Christmas hurdle. He was going really well at Navan when falling. He's a bit of a character, as he showed at the back end of last season and earlier on in the season as well. But he's a very talented one. He's currently around 8-1 for the stairs hurdle. If winning this, then he is going to get drastically shorter than this. There's also talks of Classical Dream going to the race as well. So if he was to win this with Classical Dream, there's a very high chance he'll go to be a clear favourite, although need to know where Champ's going at the same time. But yeah, Flooring Porter will definitely be one to keep an eye on. And Dan, any festival runners running over Christmas?
Well, hopefully I'm in kind of full on handicap mode now for the festival already. So I've got a few which I have my eye on down the line. First one's Imperial Alcazar, who is scheduled to run. I think he's already jocked up on the 27th at Chepstow in a novice handicap. I know it's early, but I think he was on my shortlist for the Ultima beforehand, and he still kind of is. He's second in the match on his chase debut. Didn't look great at the time, but he was behind Silver Forever, obviously conceding weight. I think he was learning a lot on the job there, and I think there's a bit of a more upside to him yet. I think he's a decent horse. I think with experience, he could definitely show up in some of the top staying handicap chases down the line. The other one is Dickie Diver, 238 at Wincanton in a Temps qualifier. Now, this horse seemingly been a dark horse for 3-4 years now. He's an 8-year-old with only 5 runs on the rules. He was 4th in the Albert Bartlett in 2019, which had Melorindo, Alaho, and Lisnagar Oscar in it. Didn't quite convince as a chaser last season, but the form of his chase debut worked out really well. And he was set a pretty much impossible task behind Monkfish at the Cheltenham Festival last season. Rated 140 over hurdles. Obviously, we know JP colours. We know the kind of plotting that can ensue here. If he does run in here, he's not guaranteed to. I think he has 2 other entries, 1 over hurdles elsewhere and 1 over fences. But if he runs in the Temps qualifier, I mean, I'd be trying to get request to bet markets up already for the final. And if he finishes 4th, 5th or 6th, then we're in a good spot. And the final one is Noble Yeats. Now, he's another one. He's entered 3 times. He's got 1 over 2 miles, 1 over 2.5, and 1 at 3 miles. They entered them at Cheltenham the other week. I think it was in the Paddy Power Gold Cup or whatever Gold Cup we just had, 2.5 mile handicap. He was given a mark of 149. Didn't run him in the end. I think they were probably a bit annoyed they had £7 more than his Irish mark. Now, if he runs over the 2 mile trip, I'm convinced they're just plotting him up for something big because I think he needs 2.5 at least. Same connections as the Shunter who won the plate, the festival last season. I could definitely envisage him turning up there if he kind of runs in shorter distances in the interim and kind of gets a bit more of a lenient mark with a view to Cheltenham. And now I can breathe for now.
I'm sure you have so many. I know you've told me you have stupid amounts of bets that you want to tell us about across the Christmas period. A quick note on Alcazar, just whilst you capture breath. That run at Newbury was on quick ground and all of his best form has come on like soft heavy. So I think providing the ground, and it's most probably going to be, is on the softer side, I actually think you'll see a lot more of an improved performance from that as well. Okay, festival bets. I've only got a nap really and one to keep an eye on, so I'll go first. I think it's just worth noting the 215 market raising on Boxing Day, Captain Chaos. We've all heard it a million times before. Doesn't run without blinkers. They stick the blinkers on. He runs £50 better than before. He's £5 below his last winning mark. Bridget Andrews is at the meeting, so they may give her a good ride. Keep an eye on it. If he has blinkers and an early market as a nice price, then go for it. But I do expect that price to fold away quickly. Jake, bets for Christmas.
Yeah, so I'll start on Boxing Day at Kempton. The 120 is a novices handicap chase. And Danny Kirwan is entered up and Harry Cobden's going to ride. And yeah, I think he's got a great chance. All his best form is on right-handed. All his wins under rules have been right-handed. So going back this way around will be a big benefit to him. He ran at Cheltenham on his only start of fences so far in October, and he ran a really nice race. He was second behind Annual Invictus, who's a 143 horse. Behind him, he had Torn and Frayed, a 133 horse, and Favois, a 145 horse for Dan Skelton. So that was a nice little race, really. And yeah, they've given him a break of 65 days between races, which I think is another thing that helps him. When he won at Wincanton at the end of last season, it was after a little break. So yeah, I think he's primed. He's on an unchanged mark of 133. I think he'll go really close. The 210 at Wetherby, you've got the Roland Merrick handicap chaser, grade 3. It's going to be on ITV as well. And the horse I like here is Empire Steel. So last season he beat Protectorat in a 3-mile novice chase by like 41 lengths. Obviously you can't really take that form literally, but he's a nice horse. He ran really well at Haydock in his reappearance last month. He was running off a mark of 140. And yeah, he getting to the 3-mile marker, he was absolutely tanking along. There was an extra furlong and a half to go at that point though on this occasion. So he kind of like dropped out of contention and then ran on again at the finish. But he still ran really well. He was behind Strictly a Dancer, who obviously was a really progressive horse at the beginning of the season and went on a bit of a sequence. He's been raised £1 for that, which I think is fair, off 141. I think he'll go really close back at Wetherby, especially as Connections decided that they would go for this rather than the Tommy Whittle last weekend, which he was entered up for. In the King George, obviously, I've got Asterion Forlonge. I think he's got a really good chance, as mentioned earlier. I won't go into that again. And then there's one on the 27th of December at Chepstow. The 105 is a 2-mile, 3.5 furlong handicap chase. I've been banging on to this about this race to Dan for pretty much every time I've seen him at Cheltenham this year. But Venetia Williams literally just wins it every year. So in the last 9 renewals, she's won 6 of them. And then in 2 of the other ones, she finished 2nd and 3rd. So like she literally targets it for whatever reason. I don't really know if it's just because of the ground or what, but anyway, she always tries and wins it. And this year she's entered up Funambule, Sivola, however you say his name. I think that he would have a great chance. So he's entered up and he's got a mark of 155, which would give him top weight, which obviously isn't ideal. But last year she won it with Separ. She was rated 154. So it shows it can be done. They've also got that little, that £10 claimer, Ned Fox, who did quite well the other day in that Chissy Balco race. So I think, you know, if they put him on, taking off £10, then that would be another bonus. But even if they don't, I think he would have a great chance. He's also entered in the Wayward Lad, though, so I have no idea which race he's running in. As of recording, there's no indication with jockey booking where he'll go. But if he does run off a mark of 155, especially with a £10 claimer, but either way, I think he's got a great chance at 8-1. You can back him each way.
Lovely stuff. Dan, speed roll it. Go on. Who have you got?
Quick comment on those ones, Jakes, because I think you've got, if you're at Kempton and someone's going to the races, you've got the prime absolute nut job double of Asterion Forlonge and Danny Kirwan, because those two horses together, they are absolute Fruit Loops. Like Danny Kirwan, the way he jumped at some of those fences at Cheltenham, it's like he couldn't have been further away if he tried. Like he just launched himself at things. He's an absolute nut job.
Yeah, he jumped really well for the majority of the way around. As you say, he was taking chances, but he was getting over like without any problems. And then up the home straight, he started like hanging right a little bit. He jumped right a couple of times, and then up the home straight, he hung right and did like a mini might bite type of thing. But then he ran on again. Like he is a bit of a nutcase, but that's the ones you want to be backing, the ones you get a decent price for, and they've got bundles of ability.
Double up the nutters, and we'll see how that gets on a Kempton nut job double. Love it. So I've kind of looked at some of the lower graded handicaps that obviously final decks aren't out. There's about 8 or 9. I'm just going to speed run through them. Like I think these are just the horses. They turn up, they're good to have on your short list. I think it's nice to get a bit of a few different races to preview anyway. So we'll start at Wetherby. These are all on Boxing Day. The 1 o'clock, Drumconnor lad, 11-year-old, but ground looking to be heavy at Wetherby, and he has a great record on heavy ground. The conditions are looking to suit. He runs there. Had a prep run over hurdles last year before winning over fences next time out. That win came off 139, would run off 137 if he turned up here, and the prep's been nearly identical. Is entered elsewhere, but he's one to keep on side on that 2.5 mile race. 245 is a horse I absolutely love called Hillcrest. Absolute tank of a horse. Like inevitably will be a pretty decent chaser. He's entered a handicap hurdle for the first time off like a mark 128, which should be workable. Not sure he's guaranteed to run, but it's a horse I really like. And in that same race, a horse called Fly Smart for Venetia Williams is entered. Used to be Willie Mullins and Rich Ritchie, had a really high reputation with them, never quite fulfilled it. He actually finished second to Fairnay, who's now with Venetia, back in France a few years ago. I think he might just be one they might get to the grips with in time. Not sure if he's going to run, but he's one to note for Venetia who can turn these around. And then another one at Wetherby, the 320 Laskadine. JP, Ben Haslam, we all know the drill here. 3 absolute no-shows so far this season, all on good ground. But it was similar to last season before showing much improved form on softer ground. He's back on his last winning mark of 112. We know how these kind of go. If there's money for him, chances are it's on, and I'm hoping it will be. Okay, little breather. And then we move on to Sedgefield, of all the holy grounds on the Boxing Day. So this horse entered in 2 races, one over hurdles, one over fences, but he absolutely loves it around at Sedgefield, and that's Oxwich Bay. Goes well on soft and heavy. It's meant to be pretty testing ground at Sedgefield by all weather forecasts I've seen. Shaped as if in desperate need of the run last time out, and without the cheek pieces, which is often seen into best effect. If he is declared for either race, I wouldn't mind. With cheek pieces back on, chances are I think he'll go very well. Now, a horse I hold very close to my heart because I'm persisting with him, whether I should or not, is a horse called Here We Have It, who I think we discussed on the first episode of this as one of my horses to follow. He's ran twice in novice hurdles so far this season, and I'm absolutely honest, he didn't really seem to try. First run was not ridden to win. Second time out, clearly looked in need of it again, hit the front and just got tired. Although maybe that's becoming a theme of his, but regardless, he's got 2 entries in novice handicap chases, both over 2.5 miles, which should see him to best effect. And he's got a mark 109, which if you look at his run behind Tommy's Oscar last season, that looks a very exploitable mark. Fences are going to be his game. He's got some very good point form in the book, and Laura's horses are invariably better over fences. And she did tell me, I reckon this lad's a 140 horse over fences. So hopefully he should be at least going close eventually off a mark 109. So I'm keeping the faith with him. Fontwell, Gary Moore. We know the score again. Gamble Central. Horse called Flaminger. You want the money to come. It didn't last time when he was running at the same track. He drifted quite markedly before the off, but ran well for a very long way before tiring. Knocked about. He won this exact same race off 114 2 years ago. Also won it over course and distance in October 2020 off 118. Now down to 106. If he's geared up, he'll jump well from the front and probably take some stopping. Wincanton again. Hope You Do. Another one of my horses to follow from earlier in the season. Travelled really well on his handicap debut. Shaped like a very well handicapped horse that time, but made a really bad mistake 2 out at Exeter, which cost him any chance. Should improve for that and should be going close of his current mark, which I think is lenient. And then we get to the Potemps qualifier, which I've already mentioned that Dickie Diver is entered in. But the horse I can see winning this is Beauport. He won the EBF final at the back end of last season very impressively. He was second at Sandown last time out. The winner has won again since. The third has won next time out. And arguably, Beauport should have won that day. He was very well backed, made a mess of the last 2 hurdles, and just didn't quite work out for him. Steps up to 3 miles for the first time. Is going to get testing ground, which saw him to really good effect in the EBF final. I think most of the horses in that race seem quite out of form and chasers coming back. I don't think they're necessarily going to be geared up to win a race like this, but Beauport should be. And he would, if he's in there, he'd probably be my most confident bet of the Boxing Day from what I've seen so far. But none of these have necessarily been declared yet. If many of them get there, then great. And obviously a few conditions for them to meet in order for them to be betting propositions. But hopefully that's a nice little short list for you to look forward to when the decks come out.
You're a joke.
I know.
How did
and
you
not in a good
find
way either?
How did you find the time to go through every Class 5 meeting on Boxing Day? Ridiculous.
I did that in about 2.5 hours this morning, I kid you not. But I don't do Class 5, so I skimmed through the Class 5s. I went through meeting by meeting. I gave about 5 minutes each race of my time, unless it was like one of the big graded handicaps, or one of the graded races. I've dismissed any of those. So your Class 4s, your Class 3s, your Class 2s, all your handicaps. Quick browse through. Here we are.
Fantastic. Wow.
It's hardly a genius.
If someone wants to put all of those in a dirty little 8-fold and send us it, that would be fantastic. Because I know I'll be doing that, providing as many of them get declared as we need to.
It's about 5 to 1 for half of them to make it, I think.
Okay. Naps of the festive period. this is hopefully going to go well. Hopefully we get some winners out of it. I'll kick things off. Rule of thumb is stick to what you know. And I apologise. I know this is called the Jump Show, but my horse will be coming from the Wolverhampton meeting on Boxing Day. I will keep it short though. 410 Power Estate. He's 2 from 2 over the course and distance. He's a really big improve on the all-weather last year, winning 5 times. He's £1 below his last winning mark, which came over the course and distance. There's lots of positives from his comeback run in November. I expect him to improve plenty for that run. And I think it's also worth noting that Hugo Palmer's doing well at the moment. He's 2 from 8 with 3 seconds. He's my best bet. If that comes in, it'll be a very Merry Christmas. Jake, just whilst Dan is he's a bit red on the cheeks after that there. Who's
more so than usual.
Who's your nap for the Christmas period?
Yeah, go on. We'll go for Danny Kirwan in the novices handicap chase at Kempton.
Fantastic. And Dan, who is going to be your nap?
Beauport attempts qualifier. Young progressive horse against a bunch of out of form chasers and etc. Should win.
Fantastic stuff. That is it. That is the podcast. There was no mishaps this time round. No spinning cats. No parcels being delivered in the middle of it. Incredible. I'm very proud of us, boys. It's only taken 3. Does anyone else have anything to say before we wrap things up here?
Well, I thank you for listening. And if you got through my rant there at the end, then you are a very patient soul. And I can only thank you sincerely. So to everyone, I hope you have a great Christmas and hopefully a profitable Boxing Day. And I guess we'll see you in the new year.
We will do that. Jake, sign off.
Yeah, have a good Christmas, everyone. And yeah, good luck on Boxing Day.
Lovely stuff. Fingers crossed, Power of the Stakes brings it home for the Flat Boys. We'll see you guys in the new year.